Good morning. Quick question as we get started. What is your favorite kind of weather? I'm Colter Reed, and I'm here to help you get the day-to-day out of the way so that you can spend more time living the dream instead of just chasing the dream. Okay? So, I'll be honest, I love a good rainstorm. Where you can hear the rain hitting the roof, you can hear it hitting the window, you look outside and you can see the rain splashing as it hits. Not too much thunder, but it's a little bit of thunder, not thunder that just hits all at once and startles you if you're not paying attention, but the kind of thunder that just kind of fades in and then fades back out. Just letting you know that there's a storm outside. Now Monday I've got the day off. I'm going golfing. I certainly hope that it is sunny on Monday. Forecast is that it should be sunny. It should be 76 degrees, 25 for those of you in Europe. Margaret says sunny and 60s. Yeah, I don't know. After living in California for a few years, 60s is nice. Low 60s, I want a jacket. Upper 60s, long sleeves will do. But thanks for joining me live, Margaret. So, what are we talking about today? We're talking about the American bison. And fair warning, in the next 10 minutes, I will slip up at least 3 times and call them buffalo. Because in Wyoming, everybody calls them buffalo. They're American bison, but we call them buffalo. We're going to talk about productivity storms. When everything just seems to happen at once, we're going to talk about some tips to help you get through the storm, and then we're going to talk about sleeping through the storm. Okay? So, this is the American bison. This photo I took on our trip to Yellowstone National Park last summer. Yes, I took this, I rolled down the window, took the photo, and there were bison that were closer than this. Beautiful creatures. And they love to run. And when there's a storm coming, bison will run into the storm. Cows will run away from the storm. So if the storm's coming from the west, the cows will run east. They see the dark clouds coming. They want to get away from it. They feel the cold wind coming off of it. They want to run away from it. But you can only run for so far. Eventually, you hit the edge of the pasture. You hit the fence line, and now you're stuck. You can't run any further. You have done all you can to hide, and there's no place left. And eventually, the storm catches up with you. Now, there is a chance that the storm will dissipate by the time it gets to you, or it will go a different direction. It's possible, which is why the cows do it, because sometimes it works. But most of the time, they just get stuck. And there's the storm. But bison run into the storm. The storm's coming from the west. The bison run west. They run into it. They face the storm. And the funny thing is, the storm's moving this way, the bison move this way. They get through the storm faster that way. Now, they put the bison on the Wyoming state flag. And as the bill was going through the legislature, it got pretty far through the process before somebody realized that they had put the bison on it facing the wrong way. It was originally facing to the right. But that meant that when the flag was flying and the wind was blowing, because, it's Wyoming, the bison was going to have its back to the wind, and that's not how bison stand. They face the storm. Even when they're not running, bison face into the storm. L.R. Jackson, hi, thanks for showing up. Because bison are prepared with the best wool ever. Yeah, look at them. They are, let me go back to the photo. Yeah. All that wool up front, they are built to face the storm. And so fortunately, they did realize the mistake. They just made a quick amendment to the bill, and they got the Bison facing the right way. So they face into the storm. Now, so why is that important to us? Okay, we would all love it if our life was always sunny and 60s. Wouldn't that be nice? The sun is shining, and the birds are chirping. Birds do kind of get quiet when it's raining. It's one thing about rainstorms. But the sun is shining, clear blue skies. The birds are out. The birds are singing. Bees are buzzing. Not too close to you, and everything is just beautiful. That's how we like productivity to be. We have a few meetings. They're spread out. Even if they're back to back, there's still a buffer in between them, so that if one of them runs long, we have time to get to the next one. We're not running late to everything. We have a reasonable number of things that we need to do in the day. It's well balanced between the time that we have committed to others in meetings and the time that we need to work on tasks. There's a nice balance here, but that's not always how life goes, is it? For example, as we're coming out of the pandemic here, things have started to open back up. Things are starting to happen again, and our family is actually really busy for a few days here. It started Wednesday night, and it's going to continue through Sunday. And yeah, it's a bit of a productivity storm. I even considered canceling this broadcast, but I enjoy doing this. So I wanted to go live and talk about this because it is an important thing to have in mind. And I want to share some tips that have helped us to get through this productivity storm so that maybe you can get through your next productivity storm a little bit easier too. Margaret makes a good point here. Without the storms, we wouldn't appreciate the sunny days. Yeah. The storms help us to appreciate what it's like to not have the storm, and it also helps us to prepare for the storms so we have more sunny days. So, let's get started here. Okay, tip number 1, don't panic. Okay, it is so easy to get overwhelmed and just get scared and just want to run from everything. But just because there's a storm going on outside, that doesn't mean that there has to be a storm going on inside. Okay, you can choose your response to the storm. And the best thing that you can do is keep your wits around you. Don't let the storm take over. Don't let the storm take control. You are in control. Whatever's going on outside, you still choose how you respond. You can make any situation better or worse depending on how you respond to it. Okay, so the first tip, don't panic. Second tip, write everything down. Okay, this is not a time to try to juggle what you have to do in your mind, because you need to create a map that shows you exactly where the storm is. Okay? Every commitment that you've made, every meeting that you need to be to, every task that you have to do, everything you've committed yourself to, write everything down. Okay, you need to have a visual map that you can go through to see everything. Include not just the duration of the storm, but a few days past the storm, because even once you get through the storm, there's a couple of days after that you need to make sure that you're prepared for, so that the storm doesn't just keep on going. You need to be able to see those things as they're coming. Another reason why it's important to write things down is so that you can see the progress that you're making and know when you don't need to worry about something anymore. Because when you don't write things down, your brain is afraid of forgetting that you have something to do. And during productivity storms, these are often big and important things that we really don't want to forget about. And so our brain will just sit there and start reciting our task list or our meetings. It'll just start running through everything over and over again. We can't think of anything else. And even once we are past a meeting, once we have started completing things, our brain has already gotten used to these thoughts, these tasks, these events, everything just swirling around and around inside of our head. And now I'm picturing the tornado from Wizard of Oz. That stuff gets flying around in there, and our brain doesn't know when to let go of it. So even as we start to make our way through the storm, our brain has a hard time letting go. And we don't realize that, oh yeah, there are things here that we don't have to worry about anymore. So that's another benefit of writing things down. Now, tip number 3, prioritize the urgent. Yep, the urgent. Most of the time, we want to prioritize what's important. But when you're in a crisis situation, when there's a storm going on, this is a time where it actually is appropriate to put what is urgent first. Because time is of the essence. Time is the primary index that you need to be paying attention to. At this point, we're going to kind of assume that everything that's on your plate is important. Otherwise, you would have gotten rid of it. But if it's still something you need to do, we're going to assume it's important at this point. Now, we usually talk about the process of eliminate, automate, and delegate in terms of how we get out of Quadrant 3, where we're working on things that are urgent but not important. But in a crisis, the technique still applies. And this is something that we've been doing this week. For example, on Thursday afternoon, my wife managed to triple book herself. She had 3 different places she needed to be at the same time. So one of those, she was able to eliminate the responsibility. She renegotiated the commitment. She reached out to the other people who were involved and said, hey, this is the situation. Do I really need to be at this meeting, or can I, is there another way that we can work this out? And they said, oh, no, it's not a problem. We understand. You'll be fine. So that was one commitment, renegotiated. She was able to ignore that one with integrity. If other people are depending on you, you can't just drop it and ignore it. That's getting into Quadrant 1, or Quadrant 4, sorry. But Quadrant 2, you're reaching out ahead of time and renegotiating the commitment. People can still know that they can depend on you. They can trust you to come through, even in the middle of a storm. And they're really going to trust you to knock things out of the park once the storm is passed. So eliminate it. And when you eliminate something, it doesn't have to be permanent. You can just defer something until afterwards, or you can skip one. For example, we're not going to mow the lawn this morning. We've just got too much going on. The lawn will survive a week without getting mowed. So eliminate. Automate, delegate. Automate, it's probably not the best time to work on automation. Automation requires more time to set things up, because you have to look at the process and figure out how to make it repeatable, how to put it on autopilot. In the middle of a storm, you don't really have the time to put that pre-work in. So that's not the best time to do it. So if you have automations in place, that's fantastic. Trust them, let them run. But it's not a good time to start new automations. And then delegate. Out of the 2 responsibilities that my wife was left with on Thursday afternoon, she asked me if I could take one of them. And so, I told the office that I was going to be offline for a little bit while I took our son to track practice. So, eliminate what you can, especially during a crisis situation. Crisis tends to give us a little bit more clarity sometimes on what's really important and what isn't. And the things that aren't important, they can take a back seat to what is important, because you're in crisis mode during a storm. Not a good time to start new automations, but you can still delegate everything that you can. During a storm, one more thing about during a storm, it's a good time to schedule tasks on your calendar. Now, this may be something that you normally do. It's a great way to see, to not only commit to doing a task and getting it done, because you're not just saying, I'm going to do this. You're saying, I am going to do this from 10 to 11 on Friday morning. I am going to do this from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. You're making a stronger commitment than just putting it on your task list and saying, yeah, I'm going to do this when I get to it. But in a storm, because you're so focused on the sequence of events and making sure that you are ready for each, you've done the preparation for each event, each meeting as it comes up, you really need to make sure that you're focused on the right task at the right time. Some tasks can wait because there are other tasks that need to be done right now. And so the order of the tasks as you're preparing for things is probably going to be roughly in the same order as when the corresponding meeting is going to take place. Not always. Sometimes things do need a little more preparation time, and so you need to start working on them a little bit sooner, a little bit further in advance. But try scheduling tasks on your calendar as you prioritize the urgent. Interleave the meetings with the tasks that you're going to do. It helps you get a clearer perspective of just how committed your time is, or maybe it's not as committed as you think it is, and you can relax a little bit. But it also helps reassure your brain that, nope, you've got this. You've got a plan in place. You'll get through this. Tip number 4, embrace good enough. If you're a high achiever, you like good results. You know that you are capable of a high level of performance, and you want to always do your best. But the truth is, not every task actually requires your best efforts. A lot of things just need done, and done is better than perfect. What you need is momentum. You need to keep moving forward. Time is a critical, precious resource, especially during a storm. This is when we often realize it the most. And so, not everything requires your best effort. Some things will, but if they don't give it that much time. This is another reason why you want to schedule time for the tasks that you're going to work on. You're familiar with Parkinson's law, which states that a task will expand to take the time available that you give to it. Well, Hyatt's corollary to Parkinson's law is that a task will compress to fit the time that you limit it to. So if you only have an hour to work on something, work on it for an hour. And whatever you get done, that's going to have to do. You're still doing your best, but you're doing your best within the constraints that you're giving the task. This is something that is universally applicable. You can do this at any time, not just when you're in the middle of a storm. But it is especially important to remember to do this when you're in the middle of a storm. And again, it's just because time is such a precious commodity. Tip number 5, pace yourself. The race goes not to the swift, but to those who keep on running. And productivity is a marathon. There are sprints that take place, but you can't sprint all the way through it. Our son actually just learned this as he started track. He loves to run. And when we send him out into the backyard to run around to burn off some energy, our yard is small enough that he can sprint the whole way. But when he's on the track and he has to do a quarter mile, he can start off sprinting. But pretty soon he realizes he's got to slow down and pace himself if he's going to make it to the end. Even during the middle of a storm, it's important for you to take care of yourself. Get the rest that you need. And this is actual, rest, proper rest and relaxation is a valuable Quadrant 2 activity that we need. Even in the middle of a storm, even in the middle of a crisis, we still need to sleep. We still need to eat. We still need to give ourselves a chance to decompress. Quadrant 4 is what we want to avoid. Quadrant 4 is when we go to Quadrant 4 to escape and to just get away from what we're trying to do, to avoid the responsibilities, that's when more problems develop. That, if we start dropping things on the floor and not fulfilling the obligations that we have made to others, then we're just going to extend the storm. That's the other thing that happens when you run all in the same direction as the storm. You can extend the time that you're in the storm. And you want to get through the storm. The storm can end, and sometimes we have more control over how long the storm lasts than we realize we do. The important thing to remember is you will get through this. This too shall pass. All of the storm will pass. It's temporary. You'll get through this. And you can even come out of the storm in a better position for next time. I'm Coulter Reed. Thanks for joining me. There is one more thing, though. There was a rancher who needed some help on the ranch. So he put an ad out. He was hiring. And one of the guys who applied for the position, he was well qualified. He had the experience, knew what he was doing. And the rancher asked him, why should I hire you? And the man said, I know how to sleep through the storm. Now, the rancher wasn't quite sure how to take that. He thought the answer was a little bit strange, but the guy certainly knew his stuff. He was quite capable. He liked him. So despite the strange answer, he hired him. And so a couple months pass, and one night, the rancher wakes up in the middle of the night to the sound of rain hitting the roof. There's a clap of thunder. So the rancher gets out of bed, gets dressed, throws some boots on, throws his jacket around him, heads out into the storm. Finds that, gates of the pasture are locked. The animals are in the barn. They have fresh hay. They've got fresh water. They're taken care of. The hay is covered. The tractor's in the garage. There's wood stacked inside. There's nothing to do. And so he looks around, looks over at the ranch hand's cabin, and the lights are off. The ranch hand never even got out of bed. And the rancher now understood what it meant when he said that he could sleep through the storm. He kept an eye on what was coming down the road and was able to prepare for it so that when the storm came, he didn't have to go out in the storm. He could stay in bed where it was warm and comfortable and cozy. He could sleep through the storm. That's what happens when we spend time in Quadrant 2. We're paying attention to what is coming down the road so that we are prepared. We can see that we're already committed to X and Y. We can't commit ourselves to Z because it's just going to be too much. We know the commitments that we have made, the obligations that we have entered into, the responsibilities that we currently have. And we know that saying yes is going to overcommit us. Saying no will protect that future time and the responsibilities that we already have. So that's another takeaway from this. When you go through the storm, spend a little time afterwards, after you get through it, and just reflect on it. Look back. Was there anything that you should have seen coming that you didn't? Was there any way that that the storm didn't have to be as bad as it was? Take that into account for next time, because with proper prior planning, I don't want to get too alliterative here, but with proper prior planning, we can really reduce the severity and intensity of the storms that hit us. We can't do away with them completely. Weather is going to weather. But we can do a lot to minimize the impact when the storms hit. We can make the storms fewer and farther between. We can make them less severe. And we can be prepared for them so that when the storms hit, we don't have to get out of bed. So 5 tips for how to get through the storm. Don't panic. Write down everything. Prioritize what's urgent. Embrace good enough. And pace yourself. You will get through this. And you will be better prepared next time for when the storm happens. LR says, if the pressure of the storm gives you ideas for automations as you're going through the storm, capture them. You can get back to them. Absolutely. That is fantastic advice. Thank you for that. Tim, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Appreciate it. So, if you have found this information useful, please like the video. If you have thought of somebody who is going through a storm and needs this information, share it with them. They'll appreciate the fact that you were thinking of them. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so that you get notified every time that I have a new video available to help you get the day-to-day out of the way and transition from chasing the dream to living the dream. I am Colter Reed, and it's time for me to go have some waffles. Take care.